How are you making sure that you become someone that someone else, hopefully you, but anybody else, can look up to? Hey there, my name is Emiliano. I'm a first year medical student here at Humanitas University. This is quite strange because it is the first time I am filming in my room. I don't know if my roommate can hear me, not roommate, my flatmate can hear me. I don't know a lot of things, so I'm really experimenting. I'm even a bit nervous, so yeah, that's me right now. But today we're talking about gap years. And if you're interested in gap year, you should watch this playlist over here, but you should also keep watching this video. You can click on this playlist all the way at the end. Anyway, gap years. I took a gap year from April to a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's crazy. It was almost 15 months. A bit more than a gap year, but it's fine. Because that gap year made me someone that I know younger me would look up to right now. And thanks to this gap year, these two different people, younger me and the person I aspire to be, are now the same person. Firstly, I learned to challenge myself in a way that I had never had to before. Most of the challenges we face, deadlines, homework, exams, all of that is not self-imposed. You don't say, I'm gonna do the exam on this date. I wanna write 3 essays by tomorrow. I wanna do this amount of homework. Everything is imposed on you or on us students by someone else. And the beauty of gap years is that you don't have any real structure, or you can structure it however you want. So it's really hard for there to be anything that is not self-imposed. Unless of course your parents are planning it for you or something and you're doing something you don't want. But in my case, nothing that I did was self-imposed. And so I knew that I was choosing everything that I was going to do and that I was doing, from this YouTube channel, to the books I was reading, to the things I was writing down, to the habits I was ingraining. Everything I knew I was doing because I wanted to, or because I felt like I had to in a sense. I was forcing myself to because I knew it was going to be greater in the long run. And this habit of challenging myself and of picking up extra challenges because I want to instead of because they're being handed to me is one of the biggest changes that I can tell. And it's not a change that'll stop when my gap year stops. And because even continuing this YouTube channel while we have 8 hours of lectures a day, it's gonna be a challenge, but it's a challenge I'm willing to try to tackle and I'm willing to overcome because I'm giving it to myself, not because anybody else is forcing me to. My gap year really helped with my confidence. There were a few specific things that I did that boost my confidence up, but overall my gap year, since it's something that's so not ordinary, it's becoming more and more common, which I think is great. I think most people should consider taking a gap year. However, it's not as common, and so just going against the grain, going off the beaten path, it makes you feel sure of what you're doing, or it makes you eventually become sure of what you're doing because you're choosing something, you're actively going against the established rules, the established norms. And that was really confidence inspiring. I knew that I wasn't doing something that was normal, but I knew that I was choosing to do it and that I would be fine. Also, for example, a few activities I could name was doing the triathlon and coming in 5th, which you can watch up here. That was really nice, and it was really confidence inspiring. This YouTube channel, for example, is really confidence inspiring, especially right now when I'm meeting new people and people find out. It's still a bit weird for me. What I mean to say is that I struggle so much to initially tell anybody that I was starting a YouTube channel. It took me 6 weeks. And right now, people I posted on my Instagram, people come up to me, and it still makes me a bit uncomfortable. It's still a bit ooh, yes I do, but I wouldn't call myself a YouTuber. It's just a whole thing. But my confidence from when I started to right now, from 6 videos to I think around 50, it's completely changed. It's a complete opposite. Another change that my gap year had was just growing up. Sure, age-wise, it was 15 months of my life, but there was more to it than that. I think I would describe it as mindfulness, as becoming more aware, and perhaps thinking in longer-term mental models, so to speak. We're sure that is a byproduct of age, and because obviously as we age, we grow more mature and we just grow up. However, I do also think that most of what happened during my gap year, most of what I lived through during my gap year were very unique experiences to me, very unlike day-to-day high school or maybe even day-to-day university where every single one of your days is pretty much the same, and it's the same not only as the day before or the day that is gonna follow, but as the days of the people around you. And my gap year gave me such a unique range and spectrum of experiences that it really made me grow up, I think, in a completely different way than university will. I'm sure university will change me, and I'm sure I'll grow up so much more during university just because it's 6 years. But I do think that my gap year had a completely different effect on me, and I'm sure that I would be a completely different person if I had not taken a gap year, at least when it comes to being grown up and all that that implies. Next on the list is reading, because during the IB, I forgot to read. That's not true, I didn't forget, I just didn't prioritize it. In my head, I was so busy, I had so many other things, more important things to do, that I just didn't make the time to pick up a book except when it was for an assignment. I must have read around 10 or 15 books throughout the 2 years, which compared to what I was reading beforehand was nothing. Do you ever stop doing something and you don't realize how much you miss it until you start doing it again? That's what happened to me with reading. I read so much. And then high school, I kind of just stopped, and I didn't realize how much I missed it until my gap year. During my gap year, I had so much free time to read and to pursue books that I knew were interesting, and once I picked it up again, I couldn't stop. I became once more addicted to reading, and I made it the habit that it had been before the IB. And so I know that the amount of time I could dedicate to reading during my gap year isn't gonna be anything like the amount of time I have available to dedicate to reading during university. However, I am completely sure that I do not want to let off reading, and that I'm gonna read every day, even if it is 2 pages, even if it is like 5 minutes during breakfast, even if it is while I'm in the bathroom. I just know that I won't stop reading because it is one of the things that I found the most valuable, and it is going to become one of my non-negotiables. Reading is life-changing, and I'm not willing to give that up anymore. During the IB, I really enjoyed learning. I really enjoyed the lessons and the classes I was taking, but it was all very structured. During my gap year, I didn't have that kind of structure. I didn't have somebody to tell me what I was gonna be reading today, what I was gonna be learning about today, what I could research. I just had time thrust into my hands, and I was like, all right, what can I do with this? And I learned to learn. Sounds weird, but I learned to learn outside of a classroom. To learn while being removed from academics, from grades, from somebody's telling you if it's good or bad. I just learned to find what interests me, to find what I like, what I'm passionate about, what I enjoy doing, what I enjoy just knowing about, and just going down that rabbit hole. There's so much things to know and to discover, and my gap year allowed me to do that outside of a classroom, outside of a grade, outside of being told what the reading assignment was, outside of being told what I had to do next. And that was great because I learned so much differently. I don't know if more or less, I just learned differently, and I learned about things that I never would have learned about or even thought about learning about if I hadn't taken the gap year. I changed so much throughout my gap year that I feel like in some senses I entered in as one person, became another, then another, and then I exited as somebody else entirely. One example of this is how my approach to being informed about the world changed. During high school, during the IB, I was really into reading the news, knowing about the world, just because I wanted to be hyper aware of what was going on in our world. I don't know how good or how bad that was, but coming out of my gap year, I've taken a change like 180. I don't consume news anymore. I used to listen to podcasts. I used to like read the news during class. I used to like get like some newsletters to my email. I don't consume any news anymore. No, that doesn't mean I'm ignorant or that I'm clueless or that I don't care about the world. I just realized that it wasn't netting positive in my life. I wasn't becoming a better person. I wasn't really seeing the world through better eyes because of the news or anything like that. So I just thought, okay, what if I stopped? And it's been great. I really enjoy not being aware of every tragedy and every flood and every victim of anything that goes on in the world. If it's something very big and extremely newsworthy, of course I find out, and if I'm interested and when I'm interested in my own terms, I will go in and I will research and I will read about it, and I can come back out an informed person. But I'm choosing to dip my toes into that news rabbit hole every once in a while instead of constantly being bombarded by news. It also helps that I read this book, Factfulness, by these three people, because it really changed the way I look at the world. But the best book I've read ever that changed my perspective on this, I mean, better in general, but the best book I've ever read that was also like completely like mind-altering, perspective-changing was Humankind by Rutger Bregman, and it's a great book, and I'm making a video on it soon. But yeah, those two books really changed, or really aided my transformation from news junkie, so to speak, to an A news person, so to speak. I don't know how much of a creative person you're born or how much of a creative person you can become. I never saw myself as being creative. I can dance. I've danced before, like on stage, like we've won prizes and stuff. But if you put me in the middle of a dance floor with nothing but a beat, I cannot dance to save my life. For example, I can't play an instrument. I can barely like clap to the rhythm. It's weird. Like, I'm not creative in the traditional sense of the word. I can't paint, I can't draw. I don't feel like I can like do theater or something. It's just not part of who I am or what I can do. But I don't know if I discovered or I developed or I nurtured this like other creative facet in my life during my gap year, because I went from not being creative at all to realizing that actually like the YouTube thing is actually not very uncreative. There is actually quite a bit of creative thought that goes into it. I wouldn't say it's the same as editing a movie, of course, or as painting or as singing or anything, but I do think that there is creative flow that you have to tap into every once in a while when you really want to think of a good thumbnail, or know how to edit a vlog, or pick up the music, or how to cut things, or like how to like edit things together. All of that, it surprised me because I thought I was 0% creative, and the YouTube channel kind of helped me figure out that I'm not 0% creative. I might be 5% creative or 10% creative, maybe even like 20% creative every once in a while. And just that was really strange to like figure out and to like realize that, hey, I'm not creative. I just don't do the traditionally creative things, but I can be creative every once in a while, and I can do creative things every once in a while. And that was like a great change that I had, and a great like mindset shift that I had. Now, perhaps most importantly, I really embraced kind of being or wanting to be uncomfortable. It sounds weird. Like nobody really wants to be uncomfortable, but if you're locked up doing quarantine, taking care of yourself for a year and a half, eventually it's gonna get boring. At least that was my experience. I got bored like eventually, and I thought, all right, what can I do that I've never done before? And that's like a naturally discomforting thought. Like, what can I do that's new, that I've never done? What can I do that nobody would expect me to do? And part of that answer was this YouTube channel. And it's still quite uncomfortable for me. Like when somebody brings it up in public, I still struggle a bit to know how to react, know how to approach it, and to like to this day, I can't be in the same room as somebody who is watching one of my videos. It just makes me feel weird. I don't know how, it just weird. So it's certainly a work in progress, the seeking discomfort. I mean, coming here, like moving to Italy by myself is certainly not comfortable, but it is the sort of discomfort heavy opportunities that make us grow the most, and that make us feel just more, I feel like better about ourselves. Like it makes us self-confident. You're like, oh, I was uncomfortable, but I pushed through it, and now I'm on the other side, and this is great. I should have done this sooner. I just think that seeking discomfort is one of the best things you can do, and it's just embracing that feeling of discomfort as whenever you're uncomfortable, saying, all right, I'm uncomfortable because I'm growing, I'm uncomfortable because I'm changing, because this is new, but this is a good new. It's not a bad new, it's like a good new that'll result in transformative, positive changes. That like tapping into that mentality of, maybe discomfort isn't such a bad thing. Maybe I should be more uncomfortable every once in a while. I think that was one of the biggest and the most important changes that my gap year brought to me personally. Now this goes against what I just said about being uncomfortable, but I also learned to accept conformity. I think there's this notion online that's like very pervasive, that the grind never stops, that you always have to be hustling, that you always should be looking to that next big thing, like what are you gonna do next, what are you gonna get next, what's next, never stopping. I disagree with that so much. I think that's quite unsustainable, and I'm here for a long and a good time, right? And that means being sustainable, not burning out, not doing things because you feel like you need them. There's this really good quote by Annie Dillard, and it says, the way you spend your days is, of course, the way you spend your life. What I'm saying right now is that my gap year really made me feel comfortable with sometimes accepting that this is the best I'm gonna do. I'm just saying, all right, I did my best, I tried my best, this is my best, here it is, I'm out, I'm done, this was my best, I can't do anything more, and that's enough for me. I'm not gonna get hung up on like these results or whatever like happens after this. I'm just gonna be happy that I did my best and just be happy with what I have and what I'm doing, and know when to call it quits too, and be like, all right, that was my best, I can't do more, so I'm not gonna ask more of myself. So yeah, just learning to be satisfied, learning to be happy, learning to be grateful of what you have, not always looking towards the next big thing. Sometimes just pulling back, looking around, and knowing how much you have already can be equally, if not more valuable than looking forward towards that next big thing. But yeah, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys soon. There's vlogs, there's gap year stuff, there's more IB stuff, definitely more vlogs. The vlogs are in high demand right now. I'm doing first days, I'm doing days in the life, I'm doing morning routines, I'm doing like a Saturday, I'm doing a Monday. It'll be really fun because every day is different, even if every day is also very similar. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next week.